So whether you're intimidated by or bored by your wedding contracts, you need to read them. Now more than ever, it is vital that you read through them and make sure that they are covering your Hey bridal beauties, today's topic might be a little off-putting to some of you, but please stick with me here. It is so important that you go through each and every one of your vendor contracts to make sure that you aren't going to get screwed over. I've seen it so many times where a couple was verbally promised that they could do something or that they could have something at their wedding, and then wedding time rolls around and it was never put in the contract, so they aren't able to do or have that thing. So I just updated the Unveiled Ultimate Wedding Planner with specific contract checklists for each and every vendor so that you can go through those and make sure the contract is correct and that it has everything that it needs to before you sign it. So I'm not going to go through the specifics for each and every vendor because that would be a really long video. It's pretty detailed, but I wanted to put together a high-level video for you that covers the most important line items that need to be in every single contract before you sign it. So after you watch this, go grab your Unveiled Ultimate Planner so that you have the specific contract checklist for each vendor. I will link that in the description below. So let's get into the wedding vendor contract checklist. The last one that I'm going to tell you about is the most important, so be sure that you stick around through that very last one before you head over to get your wedding planner. If you hear little baby squeaks, I have my 2.5-month-old in here with me, so hopefully we can make it through this. Okay, so the first thing that needs to be in each and every contract is your name, your partner's name, and the vendor's name. Be sure that those are all specifically laid out. I know it sounds obvious, but just be sure that that's in there. And you also want to make sure that you have the specific people's names who will be on site. So if you are signing a contract with a specific photographer, but they're like part of a bigger company, you want to make sure that the photography company's name is on there as well as that specific photographer, so they can't switch photographers on you on the big day. So you want to have the specific person's name on there, name or names, and then also the number of assistants that will be on site as well. The next thing that you need to make sure that is on each and every contract is your event date, the time, and the specific address or addresses. This one is obvious as well, but you want to double check that they have this correct before signing the contract. Nothing worse than signing a contract for the day after your wedding. So just double check that everything is correct. The next thing that you want to have in each and every contract is how many breaks each vendor is going to take and how long those breaks will last. Some vendors might not have this in their contract, but you want to make sure that they add it in. They might just say, oh, we just take breaks as we need to or whatever, but you don't want somebody who is going to be on a ton of breaks. So be sure you discuss how many breaks will be taken and kind of the timing of that, as well as how long those breaks will be, just so that you can make sure your vendors are on top of it on your wedding day. The next thing that you want to have in your contracts is whether you are required to provide vendor meals. So most of your vendors will ask that you provide a meal for them. This is a totally normal wedding thing. Your caterer will be used to this and they will ask you how many vendor meals you need. So in each contract, be sure that you know if you need to provide meals and how many you need to provide to each vendor, so that you can provide that number to your caterer. The next thing that needs to be in each and every one of your wedding vendor contracts is an itemized list of all of the equipment that they will be providing. And you want them to be extremely specific here. You want to make sure that the quantity is in the contract as well as the specific description, especially if it's something like a rental item or a decor item. You want to make sure you get the correct one for your wedding day and that they're not going to switch it out for you because it wasn't in the contract. So be sure that there are specifics laid out here. The next thing that needs to be in each and every one of your vendor contracts is the dress code for the vendors. This one might not be in a lot of their contracts, so you really want to make sure that you are discussing this and getting it in the contract, especially if you are having a more formal wedding. You don't want your photographer to show up in like torn up jeans or something if you're all in formal wear. So be sure that you discuss this and get this in the contract so that you can make sure everybody is dressed appropriately. The next thing that you need to have in your contracts is the date by which you can make any changes to that contract. So for a lot of vendors, you will need to be providing head count and specific counts of specific things, or things like catering, you'll be picking the menu, and cake, you'll be picking the flavors. So you want to know how long you have to make those decisions and how long you have to change your mind if you need to. And be sure you mark these dates in your calendar and set yourself an alarm for like a week or 2 out so that you know that you need to come to final decisions, final head counts, etc. way before the actual due date. The next thing that should definitely be in every single contract is the negotiated rate. Do not sign a contract if there is not a finalized price decided on in there. Usually this will be hourly, but for things like catering and rentals and stuff, that will be quantity based. Along these same lines, you want to make sure that they have their overtime policy in the contract and that you understand it, and that they have any fees laid out that will apply if you do go overtime. This happens a lot, especially like with photography. So you want to make sure that you know the policy if you do need to make the decision as to whether you want to have your photographer or a certain vendor stay longer than you initially planned. You want to know how much that's going to cost you. The next thing that needs to be in your contracts is the deposit amount and the due date for that. So most vendors will require a 40 to 60% down payment to reserve your spot with them. So you want to be sure that the amount that needs to be paid for the down payment is included in the contract, as well as the date that you need to pay that by. And then obviously we need the final payment amount and the due date for that. And be sure you mark those due dates in your calendar. Most vendors will have you pay them on the wedding day. So just be sure that you know when you need to pay everybody by, and get those reminders in your calendar so that you're not missing any payments and not having a vendor show up, because that would be terrible. And then the last one, and the one that I told you is the most important, especially in these crazy times, is their cancellation and refund policy. Life happens, obviously crazy stuff happens in the world, so you really want to make sure that they lay out their cancellation and refund policy in the contract and that you completely understand it before you sign. I think now more than ever, we realize the importance of this. So be sure that that is in there and that you completely understand it before you sign that contract. So there are a ton of other items that are very specific to each vendor, because each vendor's contract does need to be a little bit different and cover specific things based on the services that they are providing you. But I think this list will definitely get you started. Like I said, I'll link the Unveiled Ultimate Wedding Planner below, and that does include the specific checklist for each and every vendor. If this video was helpful, please give it a big thumbs up and send it over to your bride buddies. I know this one isn't a ton of fun, but it's just so important that you make sure that you really have everything covered in each of your contracts. Go watch this video next, and be sure that you go grab your Unveiled Ultimate Wedding Planner, and we'll see you next time. Happy planning!